The air inside the small hall felt different than it should have, not colder, not warmer, just softer, like the room was holding its breath. The lights were gentle and low, and they made the walls look calm even though people were moving everywhere. Somewhere near the back, a quiet laugh rose and then faded, and in the space it left behind, a strange silence stayed. It was the kind of silence that made you listen to your own heartbeat, even if you did not want to. A young woman near the doorway paused without knowing why, her fingers still wrapped around the strap of her bag, her chest rising slow, her mind trying to name a feeling that did not have a clear shape yet. Her name was Myra, and she had promised herself she would not be nervous tonight. She was not a fan chasing photos, not a person looking for attention. She was here because the community center needed money for a new youth program, and because she had spent the last year learning how fragile hope could be. The event was small on purpose, no stage, no loud music, no bright signs. It was meant to feel human, like a room where people could remember that kindness was real and not just a word. Still, as Myra watched the crowd, she felt a thin thread of tension, as if something important was close, something that could change the night in a way nobody expected. The room smelled like coffee, paper, and fresh flowers that someone had brought from a local shop. Volunteers moved with careful steps, carrying simple trays of water and small plates of cookies. There were teachers, nurses, local business owners, and a few quiet donors who did not want their names said out loud. At the far side of the hall, a wall of framed photos showed the center over the years, kids painting murals, teens reading books, families sharing meals. Myra had worked on that display herself. She stood in front of it now, pretending to check the alignment, but really she was using it as a shield to hide how fast her thoughts were running. She kept seeing the same image in her mind, a memory that felt too sharp. 2 months ago, a box arrived at the center with no return address. Inside were handwritten notes from former students, each one describing a moment when the center had saved them from giving up. The notes were kind and grateful, but one note was different. It was only one sentence, written in neat, careful letters. It said, "Do not trust the quiet gifts, look for the quiet reason." Myra had laughed at it at first, then she had felt uneasy, and she did not know why. She had put the note back in the box, but the sentence stayed with her like a secret she had not earned. Myra was the program coordinator, which meant she was in charge of everything that could go wrong. Tonight her goal was simple: raise enough money to keep the youth program alive through the winter and do it without turning the event into a show. She wanted the kids who would join the program to feel proud, not like a charity case. She wanted the donors to feel respected, not pressured. She wanted the volunteers to feel safe, not exhausted. It was a lot to carry for one person, and the hardest part was that she could not tell anyone how close the center was to closing. She had learned that fear could spread faster than truth. A volunteer named Jonah came up beside her with a clipboard. He was a college student with warm eyes and a steady voice, the kind of person who did not rush you even when time was short. He pointed to the schedule with a calm finger. "The guest list is confirmed," he said softly. "The last few arrived early. The speaker is ready if we need to start." Myra nodded, but her gaze drifted again toward the entrance, where the door opened and closed in slow rhythms, letting in small breaths of outside air. Each time it opened, she expected nothing, and each time she felt that same subtle pull in her chest. Jonah noticed, and he did not tease her for it. "You are listening too hard," he said with a gentle smile. Myra gave a small laugh that did not fully land. "I think the room is listening too hard," she replied. Jonah looked around, then back at her. "Maybe it is because the room knows you care," he said. His words were kind, and that kindness almost made her eyes sting because she had been pretending all day that she was fine. Myra stepped away from the photo wall and walked toward the refreshment table. She picked up a cup of water, mostly to have something to hold. As she moved, she saw people turning their heads in little waves, not all at once, not dramatic, just a pattern of attention shifting like grass in wind. It was a soft ripple, a change in posture, a quiet straightening of shoulders. She followed the ripple and saw nothing special at first, only a tall man near the hallway entrance, dressed simply, hands relaxed at his sides. He was not trying to stand out. He looked like someone who had walked in by mistake and did not want to bother anyone. Then Myra recognized him, and her breath caught in a way she could not hide. Keanu Reeves. He was there not with loud security, not with flashing cameras, just there as if he belonged to the room the same way everyone else did. His face held a calm focus, eyes open and gentle, like he was taking in the people, not the attention. For a moment, Myra felt something close to relief and fear at the same time. Relief because his presence felt like quiet safety. Fear because when someone like that arrives, a room can change. and Myra did not know if the center could handle that change. Jonah appeared beside her again, his eyes wide now. "Is that really him?" he whispered. Myra nodded once. "Keep it calm," she said, her voice low but firm. "No crowding, no shouting. This is still our night." Jonah nodded quickly and slipped away to guide volunteers. Myra watched Keanu take a few steps into the hall and pause. He did not scan the room like a celebrity searching for a seat. He looked at the photo wall, and his gaze softened as if he understood what it meant. He stood still for a few seconds, and in that stillness, the room somehow grew quieter. Myra should have gone to greet him like a coordinator, but her legs felt slow. She did not want to turn this into a performance. She also did not know why he was there. Nobody had told her. He was not on the guest list that she had approved. Her mind went back to the anonymous box, the notes, the strange sentence. "Do not trust the quiet gifts, look for the quiet reason." Her fingers tightened around the cup of water. She told herself to breathe, to be normal, to focus on the goal. And then the door opened again, and a second wave of attention moved through the room, softer but deeper. Myra looked up, and her heartbeat stumbled. Sandra Bullock had stepped inside. She did not enter like a star, either. She wore simple clothes, her hair neat, her face calm. She carried herself like someone who was trying to be respectful of a space that mattered. She looked across the room, not searching for the crowd, but searching for one point. Her eyes landed on Keanu, and in that moment something invisible passed between them. It was not a smile, not a greeting, not a dramatic reaction. It was a pause, a shared silence that felt like a held memory. People nearby noticed without understanding, and they stopped talking, not because they were told to, but because they felt something they could not name. Myra stood frozen near the refreshment table, water still in her hand, and she suddenly realized that this night was not only about money anymore. It was about something that had been hidden under the surface, something that had brought two people into the same room without any public announcement. She watched Keanu take one slow step forward, then stop again, as if he was choosing not to rush the moment. Sandra did the same, her shoulders easing just slightly, her face softening like someone letting go of a weight. No one moved toward them. No one dared to break the quiet. The silence was not empty, it was full. It held respect and distance and something like promise. Myra felt tears gather behind her eyes, and she hated that she could not explain why. She had seen famous people before on screens, but this was different. This felt like being near two human beings who were carrying a private truth carefully, so carefully that even strangers could feel it. Jonah returned, whispering with urgency. "What do we do?" he asked. Myra swallowed and forced her voice to stay steady. "We do nothing loud," she said. "We let the night stay human." Jonah nodded, but his gaze flicked to the crowd, where a few phones were starting to rise like small lamps. Myra felt a cold fear bloom in her stomach. One careless moment could ruin everything. The center needed donors, not drama. Keanu and Sandra had come quietly, and if the room turned into chaos, they might leave, and the meaning of their presence would be lost. Myra stepped forward, not toward Keanu or Sandra, but toward the crowd. She raised her hands slightly, not commanding, just asking. Her face held a calm request. "No photos," she said softly to the nearest group, her voice carrying in a way that was gentle but clear. "Please let this be a safe space. Let this be quiet." The words were simple, but they landed with weight. One person lowered their phone, then another, then another. The room settled like a surface of water after a stone had been removed. Keanu glanced in Myra's direction, and his eyes met hers for a brief second. There was no big expression, but there was gratitude there, steady and honest. Sandra looked too, and her gaze held the same quiet respect. Myra felt her shoulders loosen. She had done something right, and it had not been for praise. It had been for the room, for the kids who would one day sit in these chairs, for the idea that kindness could be protected. The host, an older man named Mr. Dale, stood near the small microphone stand, waiting for Myra's signal to begin. Myra walked over and whispered. "Delay the opening by 5 minutes," she said. "Let them settle." Mr. Dale nodded, trusting her without question. As she turned back, she saw Keanu and Sandra standing a few steps apart, close enough to share the same air, far enough to respect the space between them. Neither of them spoke. They did not need to. The room felt it anyway. Myra felt that old note in her mind again, and now it sounded less like a warning and more like an invitation. Look for the quiet reason. She looked at the photo wall, then at the two of them, then at the crowd that had calmed because she asked it to. She understood something that made her chest ache. The quiet reason might not be money. It might be a message, a reminder, a gift of a different kind, one that could not be measured in dollars. And just as Myra began to breathe more evenly, Jonah hurried back to her, his face pale. "Myra," he whispered, "someone is outside asking questions. They say they have proof that this event is not what we think it is. They want to come in." Myra felt the air shift again, that same soft change, like the room holding its breath. She looked toward the entrance, where the door stood closed for the moment, and she knew the next few minutes could decide everything. Myra did not move fast, but her mind did. The room still held that fragile quiet, like everyone had agreed to protect something without even speaking about it. The lights above seemed softer now, and the air carried the scent of coffee and flowers, but beneath it there was a new sharp edge. Jonah stood close, his voice low, his eyes fixed on the entrance. "The person outside is not loud," he whispered, "but he is confident. He keeps saying he has proof. He says this event is a cover for something." Myra felt her throat tighten, not from fear of danger, but from fear of damage. Damage to the center, to the kids, to the trust she had worked so hard to build. She looked across the room. The guests were calm again, phones lowered, conversations gentle. Keanu and Sandra still stood in the same quiet balance, a few steps apart, not acting like they owned the space, more like they respected it. It made Myra want to be brave in the same way, quiet but steady. She leaned closer to Jonah. "Do not let anyone rush the door," she said. "Ask Marisol to stand near the entrance, not like security, like a welcoming guide." Jonah nodded and moved away with care, weaving between people without pulling attention. Myra watched him go, then took a slow breath and walked toward Mr. Dale near the small microphone stand. His face was kind and worried at the same time. He had run this fundraiser for years, and he hated conflict in a place built for healing. Myra spoke softly. "We have a visitor outside who wants to interrupt," she said. "We will pause the opening, and we will handle it quietly." Mr. Dale nodded. "You want me to speak to them?" he asked. Myra shook her head. "Not yet," she said. "I want to understand why they are here." Mr. Dale looked toward the photo wall, then back to Myra. "Are you all right?" he asked. Myra wanted to say yes without thinking, but she chose honesty. "I am trying to be," she said. Mr. Dale gave a small nod of respect, as if that answer mattered more than a perfect one. Myra turned back toward the entrance. Marisol was already there, a volunteer who worked at a local library. She had calm eyes and an easy smile, the kind that made tense people soften without knowing why. Marisol held a small tray of water, like her only job tonight was comfort. She stood near the door, not blocking it, just present. Jonah stood a few feet away, hands relaxed, watching with steady focus. Myra walked toward them, and the noise in her mind grew louder even as the room stayed quiet. Who could have proof of anything, she thought. The center had nothing to hide. They had receipts, permits, records, everything. And yet the person outside sounded so sure. Myra felt that old note return again, not as a sentence now, but as a feeling. Look for the quiet reason. She wondered if this interruption was connected to the anonymous box. She wondered if someone wanted to stop the center from receiving help. She wondered if kindness could make enemies, simply because it gave people hope. Marisol opened the door just a little, enough to speak without letting the outside air flood the room. A man stood there, mid-30s, clean jacket, hair neat, eyes sharp. He held a thin folder in one hand and a phone in the other. His smile was polite, but it did not reach his eyes. "Good evening," he said. "I am sorry to disturb, but I need to speak to whoever is responsible for this event." Myra stepped forward. "That is me," she said. Her voice stayed calm, even though her heart felt too loud. The man nodded and looked past her as if he was measuring the room. "I will be quick," he said. "This fundraiser is being used to hide something. I have evidence that the center has accepted money linked to fraud. If you let this continue, you are putting people at risk. Some guests deserve to know." The word fraud hit Myra like cold water. She felt heat rise in her face, then settle into a steady anger that was quiet but real. "That is not true," she said. "We keep full records." The man lifted his folder slightly. "I can show you," he said. "I can also show your donors if you refuse me." Myra saw how carefully he chose his words. He wanted pressure without shouting. He wanted panic without proof shared the right way. Marisol held her tray steady, eyes on the man, her voice gentle. "Sir, we can talk outside," she said. "We do not need to disrupt the room." The man glanced at her and smiled again. "I agree," he said. "But you should understand, I do not want to be ignored." Myra stepped out into the hallway with the man, leaving Marisol at the door. The hallway was dim and quiet, with a faint hum from the building lights. It smelled like old paint and clean floor polish. Myra could feel the warmth of the room behind her, and it made her want to protect it more. She spoke softly. "What is your name?" she asked. The man hesitated, then answered. "Ethan," he said. Myra nodded. "Ethan, I want to see what you have," she said. "But I am also going to tell you this. If you disrupt a fundraiser for kids based on false claims, you will be causing harm." Ethan shrugged slightly, like harm was a word he could bend. "I am not here to harm anyone," he said. "I am here to expose the truth." He opened the folder and showed a printed page. It was a bank transfer record, a donation from a foundation she did not recognize, dated 3 weeks ago, a large amount enough to cover the youth program for months. Myra felt her stomach drop. That donation had never entered their accounts, not through their usual system. She had not seen it. She had not approved it. The record showed the center name, the address, the amount, everything. Myra forced her eyes to stay steady. "This is not in our ledger," she said. "Then you admit it," Ethan replied quickly. Myra did not take the bait. "No," she said. "I admit I have not seen this, and that means either you are lying or someone tried to use our name." Ethan tilted his head. "And what if someone inside did it?" he asked. Myra held his gaze. "Then I will find it," she said. "But I will not let you accuse us in front of donors without a fair check." Ethan tapped the paper. "You have a crowd in there," he said, "and 2 famous guests. That changes everything." Myra felt her chest tighten again, so he knew. He had expected them. The interruption was not random. She kept her voice low. "Why does it matter who is inside?" she asked. Ethan smiled in a way that felt practiced. "Because attention makes people listen," he said. "And because when attention is there, truth becomes valuable." Myra did not like the way he said valuable. It sounded like a price. She took a slow breath. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. "I will check our records and call our treasurer. If this is real, we will handle it. If it is not, you will leave." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And if I refuse?" he asked. Myra stayed calm. "Then I will ask you to respect this place," she said. "And if you do not, I will call the building manager and the local authorities, not to punish you, but to protect the event from disruption." Ethan looked at her for a long second, and in that pause, Myra felt his calculation. Then he nodded. "5 minutes," he said, "but I will not wait forever." Myra turned back toward the door, and before she opened it, she heard a soft voice behind her. "You do not have to carry that alone." Myra turned, startled. Keanu stood in the hallway a few steps away. He had moved without noise, without drawing the room behind him into chaos. His hands were relaxed at his sides. His face was calm, eyes open, gentle but focused. He did not look at Ethan. He looked at Myra as if the real conversation was about her burden, not the threat. Myra felt her eyes sting again. She did not want to cry in a hallway. She did not want to be seen as weak. She swallowed and tried to speak normally. "I am fine," she said. Keanu nodded slightly like he respected her attempt, but he did not pretend it was true. "You are doing your best," he said softly. "That matters." He glanced toward the folder in Ethan's hand, then back to Myra. "If someone is trying to use your name, you will need calm more than speed," he said. Ethan finally spoke, his tone sharper. "I did not ask for your advice," he said. Keanu looked at him then, not angry, not threatening, just present. "I am not here to fight you," Keanu said. "I am here to keep this place safe." His voice was quiet, and that quiet carried weight. Myra felt the hallway change. It was still silent, but now it felt grounded. Another soft step came from behind. Sandra appeared near the corner, her expression calm, her gaze attentive. She did not rush to Keanu's side like a performance. She stood with space, but her presence felt supportive, like a steady hand near your shoulder without touching. She looked at Myra. "Do you need help?" she asked softly. Myra blinked, surprised by the direct kindness. She did not know what to say. Part of her wanted to say no, because pride can be loud inside even when your voice is quiet. But another part remembered why she started this work. To accept help without shame, to let people contribute without needing control. She took a slow breath. "I need to check something fast," she said. "I need someone to keep the room calm." Sandra nodded. "I can do that," she said. Keanu nodded too. "I will stay near the door," he said. "No big presence, just steady." Myra felt something loosen inside her, not because famous people were helping, but because they were helping the way real humans help, without taking over, without stealing the story, without making it about themselves. Myra went back into the room with Jonah, who had been watching from inside with worry. She pulled him toward the side table where the event records were stored. Her hands shook slightly as she opened the binder. Jonah saw and did not comment. He just stood close. Myra flipped pages, scanning donations, dates, notes. She found nothing. No foundation name, no transfer, no match. Her heart sank, then steadied. That meant either the paper was fake, or the donation had been attempted under their name through another route. Jonah whispered, "Should we tell everyone?" he asked. Myra shook her head. "Not yet," she said. "Panic helps the wrong person." She reached for her phone and called their treasurer, a retired accountant named Mrs. Chen. The line rang twice. Then Mrs. Chen answered, her voice calm. Myra explained in a low voice, choosing her words carefully. Mrs. Chen listened, then said something that made Myra's blood run cold. "I received an email 3 weeks ago," Mrs. Chen said. "It looked like it came from you. It asked me to open a file to confirm a donation. I did not open it. I called you, but you did not answer, so I ignored it." Myra felt the room tilt slightly in her mind. Someone had tried to impersonate her. Someone had tried to get access. And now Ethan stood outside with a paper record like a weapon. She swallowed. "Can you come to the center right now?" she asked. Mrs. Chen did not hesitate. "Yes," she said. "I will be there in 15 minutes." Myra ended the call and looked at Jonah. "Someone tried to use our name," she said. "Someone sent a fake email in my name." Jonah's face tightened. "Do you think Ethan is part of it?" he asked. Myra did not answer right away. She looked across the room. Sandra stood near the photo wall now, speaking quietly with a volunteer, her tone gentle. Keanu stood near the entrance, not blocking it, just a calm presence. The guests had not noticed the storm forming at the edges. The fundraiser was still alive, still human. Myra felt the suspense settle into a clear shape. This was not only about money. Someone wanted to control the narrative, to turn kindness into suspicion. Myra closed the binder and took a steady breath. She walked back toward the entrance, ready to face Ethan again. But as she reached the door, Marisol leaned toward her and whispered, "Myra, he is not alone now," she said. "There is another person with him, and they are filming." Myra felt her heart jump, and she looked toward the glass panel of the door. Outside, she could see a second figure holding a phone up, angled toward the entrance like a trap, and in that moment Myra understood the real threat. They did not just want the truth. They wanted a moment. They wanted drama. They wanted the center to look guilty, even if it was not. Myra opened the door just enough to step out again, and Keanu shifted slightly closer, not to intimidate but to protect the space. Sandra remained inside, calm, watching the room with care. Myra faced Ethan, her voice steady. "You said you wanted truth," she said. "Why is someone filming?" Ethan did not look surprised. "Because people deserve to see what happens," he said. Myra shook her head. "No," she said. "People deserve respect, and if you were here for truth, you would not need a camera to threaten a youth center." Ethan's eyes narrowed and his polite mask slipped just a little. "Then prove you are clean," he said. "Say it on camera. Explain why this donation record exists." Myra felt the trap close in. Behind her, the room held its breath again. The hallway felt narrower now, not because the walls had moved, but because attention had. Myra could feel it pressing in, the camera outside, the waiting crowd inside, the fragile trust hanging between them. The light above flickered once and settled, casting soft shadows that made every face look more serious. She took a breath that felt heavier than the last, not panicked, but weighted with responsibility. This was the kind of moment that decided what a story became, not by noise, but by choice. Myra looked at Ethan, then at the phone held by the second person outside. She did not raise her voice. She did not step back either. "You want me to explain something that is still unfolding," she said. "That is not truth, that is performance." The second person adjusted the phone slightly, trying to frame her face better. Ethan smiled again, thinner this time. "People can judge for themselves," he said. "Silence helps the guilty." The word guilty cut deeper than she expected, not because it was true, but because she knew how easily it could stick. She thought of the kids who would walk into the center next month carrying their own quiet fears. She thought of the volunteers who trusted her. She thought of the notes in the box, the one sentence that had followed her like a shadow, "Look for the quiet reason." She realized now that the quiet reason might be courage, the kind that did not shout. Keanu stepped forward just enough to be seen, but not enough to dominate the frame. His presence was calm, like a steady wall behind Myra without touching her. He looked at the camera, not with anger, not with charm, but with clarity. "Filming someone under pressure does not reveal truth," he said softly. "It only reveals what pressure looks like." His voice was low, but it carried. The person holding the phone hesitated for half a second, just enough to show uncertainty. Ethan turned toward Keanu, irritation flashing in his eyes. "This does not concern you," he said. Keanu nodded once. "It concerns people," he replied, "and this place is full of them." Sandra stepped closer too, still inside the doorway, her voice gentle but firm. "If you believe there is a real issue," she said, "then it deserves care, not a spectacle." Her words did not accuse, they invited something better. For a moment, Ethan seemed caught between two paths. His jaw tightened. Then he gestured toward the paper again. "The record is real," he said. "Someone moved money using this center's name. That is not kindness. That is deception." Myra nodded slowly. "I agree," she said, "and that is why I am not denying it. I am investigating it. Our treasurer is on her way. We have email evidence of impersonation. If you want truth, you will wait." The second person lowered the phone slightly, glancing at Ethan. The hallway felt still, like time had slowed to watch what Ethan would do. Then Ethan laughed softly, without humor. "Wait and let the story disappear," he said. "That is what institutions always want." Myra felt a flicker of anger rise, then she let it pass. She spoke calmly. "No," she said. "Institutions want silence. Communities want trust, and trust is built by patience." Ethan looked past her toward the room. Inside, guests stood in clusters, unaware of the details but sensing tension like a change in weather. The fundraiser had not started yet. The microphone remained unused. The photo wall stood quietly, faces of children frozen in moments of joy. Myra realized something with sudden clarity. If this moment turned loud, the kids would lose more than money. They would lose belief, and belief was harder to rebuild. Myra straightened her shoulders. "Here is what will happen," she said. "You can wait outside without filming until our treasurer arrives. You can review everything with us privately. If wrongdoing is found, we will address it openly and responsibly. Or you can leave now and take your speculation with you. But you will not turn this place into a stage." Her voice did not shake. It surprised even her. Ethan studied her, and for the first time his confidence faltered. He had expected denial or panic. He had not expected calm refusal. The second person slowly lowered the phone completely. The hallway felt warmer, like a threat losing its grip. After a long pause, Ethan exhaled sharply. "Fine," he said. 10 minutes. But if you are lying, I will be back." Myra nodded. 10 minutes, she said. Ethan stepped back, motioning for the other person to move away from the door. The phone disappeared into a pocket. The hallway seemed to release a breath it had been holding. Keanu shifted slightly, creating space again. Sandra met Myra's eyes, her expression full of quiet pride. "You did well," she said softly. Myra swallowed and nodded, not trusting her voice yet. They returned inside, closing the door gently. The room felt different now, not tense but alert. Whispers moved like soft currents, but no one rushed, no one panicked. Mr. Dale approached Myra with concern. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Myra chose her words carefully. "We have a delay," she said, "but the event will continue." Mr. Dale nodded, trusting her again. Myra gathered the core volunteers near the side, Jonah, Marisol, and 2 others. She spoke in low tones, explaining just enough. "Someone tried to use our name for a fake donation," she said. "There may be people outside trying to create trouble. Our job is to keep the room calm and respectful. No discussions, no assumptions. Kindness stays first." The volunteers nodded, their faces serious but steady. As they moved back to their roles, Myra noticed something unexpected. The guests had grown closer to one another, conversations softer, more attentive. It was as if the quiet handling of tension had created trust instead of fear. Sandra moved among them, not as a star, but as a listener, asking gentle questions, acknowledging stories. Keanu stood near the entrance again, hands relaxed, offering calm smiles to anyone who caught his eye. Neither of them spoke about what had happened. Their silence was protective, not distant. Myra checked her phone. 5 minutes had passed, then 7. She felt time stretch again. What if Mrs. Chen did not arrive in time? What if Ethan returned with more pressure? What if there was something she had missed? Doubt crept in, soft but persistent. She closed her eyes briefly and grounded herself in the room, the scent of coffee, the murmur of voices, the simple fact that people were still here. Then the door opened and an older woman stepped inside, small in stature but strong in presence. Mrs. Chen had arrived. She carried a worn leather bag and an expression of calm focus. Myra felt relief wash through her chest so strongly it almost made her dizzy. She hurried forward. "Thank you for coming so fast," she whispered. Mrs. Chen smiled slightly. "Truth does not like to wait," she said. They moved to the side table, spreading out papers, phones, and printed emails. Mrs. Chen worked quickly but carefully, tracing details, comparing records. Her finger stopped at one point on the printed bank record. "This routing number is incorrect," she said quietly. "It is close to ours, but not exact. This transfer was never completed. It was attempted. Someone wanted it to look real." Myra felt a mix of anger and relief. "So the money never came?" she asked. Mrs. Chen shook her head. "No," she said, "but someone wanted others to think it did." Myra understood now. Ethan paper was not proof of corruption. It was proof of manipulation. Someone had tried to create the appearance of fraud, knowing that even suspicion could damage a small center. Myra's heart pounded, but her mind felt clear. She thanked Mrs. Chen and turned toward the door. Keanu noticed the shift in her posture and stepped closer. "Did you find clarity?" he asked. Myra nodded. "Yes," she said, "and now we need to choose how to use it." Before she could open the door, a sudden murmur rose from the crowd. Myra turned and saw the door opening again. Ethan had returned, this time without the camera, but with urgency in his step. Behind him, a few guests looked confused, tension rippling outward. Ethan's voice carried. "So have you decided to tell them?" he said. Myra felt the moment sharpen, like a blade waiting to fall. She stepped forward into the open space, not raising her voice but letting it carry. "Yes," she said. "I have decided, not to accuse but to explain." The room grew quiet again, all eyes turning toward her. Keanu and Sandra stood slightly behind her, not framing her but supporting her choice. Mrs. Chen stood beside her, calm and ready. Myra looked at the faces in front of her. Neighbors, donors, volunteers. She felt fear, then let it go. Someone attempted to use our name for a false transfer, she said. No money was taken. No funds were misused. We caught it because of careful records and patience. The person outside wanted to force a story before the truth was ready. We chose not to rush. A hush filled the room, then soft murmurs of understanding. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but Mrs. Chen stepped forward. The evidence shows impersonation, she said, not fraud by this center. Ethan face flushed. This is not over, he said. Myra met his gaze. It is over for tonight, she said. This space is not for conflict. It is for care. Ethan looked around, realizing the room was no longer on his side. He hesitated, then turned and left without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The silence that followed was not heavy. It was relieved. Myra exhaled slowly. The worst had passed, but something deeper had shifted. The fundraiser had been tested not by money but by pressure, and it had held. She looked at Keanu and Sandra, gratitude filling her chest. They nodded back, saying nothing because nothing needed to be said. But even as calm returned, Myra felt a new unease, quieter but sharper. Someone had planned this. Someone had tried carefully to break trust, and whoever it was, they might not be finished. As the room began to breathe again, Myra understood that the story was not moving toward closure yet. It was moving toward revelation. The room had settled again, but Keanu could feel the after-echo of tension in the air. It was like a lake after a stone had sunk, smooth on the surface, restless underneath. He stood near the entrance, not guarding it, just existing there with intention. His breath was slow and even, but inside him, thoughts were moving carefully, like hands sorting something fragile in the dark. He did not come here by accident, and moments like this reminded him why silence sometimes mattered more than words. He looked across the hall and saw Myra speaking quietly with Mrs. Chen, their heads closed together, relief mixed with exhaustion on their faces. Volunteers had returned to their gentle routines. Cups were refilled, chairs were adjusted, the guests had relaxed, but something had changed. They were paying closer attention now, not out of fear, but out of respect. Keanu noticed how small gestures had become louder than speeches. A nod, a step aside, a phone put away without being asked. Sandra stood near the photo wall, studying one frame in particular. Keanu followed her gaze and saw a picture of a boy painting a wide blue line across a wall, his tongue caught between his teeth in focus. The boy reminded Keanu of someone he once knew, someone who had stood on the edge of giving up before a quiet hand reached out. Keanu felt that familiar tightening in his chest, not painful, just heavy with memory. He walked toward Sandra slowly, not wanting to break the stillness. She sensed him before he spoke. She always did. They stood side by side, not touching, sharing the same small space. "You feel it too," she said softly. Keanu nodded. "This place holds stories," he replied. "The kind people do not advertise." Sandra smiled faintly. "Those are the ones that last," she said. Keanu's eyes moved back to the entrance for a moment, then returned to the room. Part of him was still listening for footsteps that did not belong, for voices that carried the wrong intention. He had learned over the years that kindness often attracted both gratitude and resistance. When something good existed quietly, there were always people who wanted to expose it, reshape it, or control it. He did not judge that impulse. He just chose not to feed it. As the guests waited, Mr. Dale cleared his throat near the microphone, unsure whether to begin. Keanu felt the moment approaching like a tide. This was where the night could turn into a story people talked about loudly or a feeling people carried home silently. He glanced at Sandra. She met his eyes and gave a small nod. Not encouragement, not instruction. Trust. Keanu stepped forward before anyone announced him. He did not go to the microphone. He did not ask for attention. He simply moved closer to the center of the room, and somehow the room noticed. Conversations slowed. Heads turned, not because he demanded it, but because his presence asked something gentle of them. He spoke without raising his voice. "I was not planning to say anything tonight," he said. His words were simple, unpolished. "I came because someone once showed me kindness without expecting credit. That kindness saved more than they knew." He paused, letting the quiet do its work. "I see that same kind of care here." The room was completely still now. No phones, no whispers. Keanu's eyes moved across the faces, not scanning but acknowledging. "You do not need to rush goodness," he continued. "When people try to force truth into the light before it is ready, it can break. Patience protects what matters." He stopped there, no speech, no explanation. He stepped back. That was all. The effect was immediate and unexpected. A woman near the front pressed her hand to her chest. A man in the back nodded slowly, as if something he had been holding loosened. Myra felt tears rise again, but this time she did not fight them. Mr. Dale lowered his notes. The microphone remained unused. Keanu returned to stand beside Sandra. She looked at him with quiet admiration. "You always know when to stop," she said. Keanu smiled slightly. "I learned when I spoke too much," he replied. As the room absorbed what had been said and what had not, Keanu felt a shift inside himself too. The reason he had come tonight was no longer just a memory. It was a choice, one he had made years ago and was still making. He remembered the day clearly now, even though it had happened long before this center existed in its current form. Years ago, before the world expected calm from him, before people watched him for silence, he had been in a different place emotionally. Tired, uncertain, carrying losses he did not know how to name. He had wandered into a small community building not unlike this one, looking for somewhere quiet to sit. No cameras, no purpose, just space. A young volunteer had offered him coffee without recognition. No questions, no excitement, just warmth. They had talked about nothing important, the weather, books, a broken chair that needed fixing. Keanu had helped repair that chair with borrowed tools. It was a small act barely worth remembering, except it was not small. It had grounded him. It had reminded him that he was still useful in simple ways. That building had eventually grown into a network of centers, not because of him alone, but because many people had chosen to keep kindness practical instead of loud. Keanu had supported it quietly over the years, never attaching his name. Tonight was not about revealing that. It was about protecting the spirit that made it possible. He felt Sandra present steady beside him. She had known about that first visit. She had known about the chair. She had been the one who once told him that some things should remain unnamed so they could belong to everyone. Keanu had listened then. He was listening now. The fundraiser continued, not with speeches but with conversations. Donors approached Myra with warmth, not suspicion. Questions were asked respectfully. Trust was rebuilt not through proof alone but through tone. Keanu stayed present but unobtrusive. When someone thanked him, he redirected the gratitude. "Talk to her," he said softly, nodding toward Myra. "She is doing the work." Near the edge of the room, Keanu noticed a familiar tension return, subtle but real. The door opened slightly. Ethan stood there again, alone this time. No camera. His posture was different now, less sharp, more uncertain. He did not step inside. He waited. Keanu felt a choice rise in him. He could ignore the man and let security handle it. He could allow the situation to end cleanly. But something about Ethan's expression stopped him. It was not guilt exactly. It was confusion. The kind that comes when a plan does not land the way it was meant to. Keanu walked toward the door slowly, deliberately. Sandra watched him go, understanding without asking. They met at the threshold. Ethan looked up, surprised. Keanu did not speak at first. He let the silence work again. "You were trying to expose something," Keanu said finally. Ethan nodded. "Yes," he said. Keanu tilted his head slightly. "Did you ever ask why it mattered so much to you?" he asked. Ethan frowned. "People should know the truth," he said. Keanu nodded. "Yes," he said. "But sometimes the truth is not the story you think it is. Sometimes it is about who benefits when trust breaks." Ethan looked away, jaw tight. Keanu continued, his voice calm. "You saw an opportunity for attention, not resolution. Tonight you saw what restraint looks like. You can learn from it, or you can walk away unchanged." Ethan swallowed. "I did not mean to hurt kids," he said quietly. Keanu believed him. Intention and impact were rarely aligned. "Then do not," Keanu replied. "Step back. Let this place be what it is." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. He stepped away from the door and disappeared down the hallway without another word. Keanu stood there for a moment longer, feeling the weight lift. He returned to the room. Sandra met him halfway. "Did you say much?" she asked gently. Keanu smiled. "Not really," he said. She nodded. Everyone felt it anyway. As the night moved toward its close, Keanu felt certain of one thing. The real climax was not confrontation. It was choice. The choice to protect dignity over exposure. The choice to keep kindness intact even when silence was misunderstood. But deep inside, Keanu knew there was one more truth left to surface. Not tonight, not publicly, but soon. Because the reason he and Sandra had come together was still unfinished, and Part 5 would ask him to decide whether some silences were meant to be broken or honored forever. The night was moving toward its end, but Keanu felt the story tightening instead of closing. The room was warmer now, not from heat but from shared ease. Voices blended softly, not rushed, not guarded. He stood near the window for a moment, watching reflections of people move across the glass like quiet memories. His hands rested loosely at his sides, but inside him a familiar weight had returned, the kind that came when a choice asked to be seen. Sandra joined him without sound. Outside, streetlights glowed faintly, steady and patient. "You're thinking about whether to tell them," she said. Keanu did not answer right away. He nodded slowly. "There is a difference between protecting silence and hiding truth," he said. "I am standing on that line." Sandra looked at him with understanding that came from years of shared space and honest pauses. "Whatever you choose," she said, "make sure it serves the people who cannot speak here tonight." Keanu thought of the kids who would come to the center next month. Kids who would not know his name and did not need to. Kids who needed safe rooms more than stories. He also thought of Myra, whose hands still shook slightly when she thought no one noticed. She had carried pressure with grace, but grace did not mean she should carry secrets that were not hers. Keanu understood now that the final act of kindness might not be silence. It might be trust. He stepped away from the window and moved through the room with the same calm intention that had shaped the night. People noticed but did not crowd him. Respect had settled in like a shared agreement. He approached Myra, who was speaking with Mr. Dale and Mrs. Chen. When she saw Keanu, she straightened, not from nerves but from attention. He waited until the conversation paused. "May I speak with you privately?" he asked. Myra nodded immediately. "Of course," she said. They moved to a quiet corner near the photo wall where the lights were softer. Sandra remained nearby, close enough to listen if needed, far enough to give space. Keanu looked at the photos again, then back at Myra. "Years ago," he said, "I was helped by a place like this. Not this exact building, but the same spirit. Someone offered me time without questions. They did not ask my name. They did not expect anything. That moment changed how I survived something heavy." Myra listened, her eyes steady, her breath slow. Keanu continued. "I supported places like this quietly after that, not as a favor, but as a responsibility." Myra felt her chest tighten. "Are you saying," she began. Keanu raised his hand gently, not to stop her, but to slow the moment. "I am saying that the attempted donation record you saw was connected to me," he said, "not by intent, but by misuse. Someone tried to move money in my name without permission. When it failed, they tried to turn the attempt into suspicion around you." Myra felt a rush of emotion, confusion, relief, anger, gratitude. "So the attack was because of you," she said softly. Keanu shook his head. "No," he said, "it was because of what this place represents. I was just the easiest shadow to stand behind." Myra closed her eyes for a brief moment. Then she opened them stronger. "Why tell me now?" she asked. Keanu met her gaze. "Because I do not want my silence to become your burden," he said. "You protected this space tonight. Now I want to protect you from carrying a half-truth." Myra nodded slowly. "What do you want to do?" she asked. Keanu considered the room, the people, the night that had survived pressure. "I do not want to announce anything publicly," he said. "Not names, not numbers, but I want you to know that the long-term support for this center is secure, clean, transparent, and I want you to decide how it is shared." Myra felt tears rise again, but this time they were steady. "You are trusting me," she said. Keanu nodded. "Trust is not silence," he replied. "It is shared responsibility." They stood there for a moment, the weight shifting from Keanu's shoulders to something balanced between them. Sandra stepped closer then, her voice gentle. "Myra," she said, "you do not need to protect a story alone. We will follow your lead." Myra looked between them, understanding now not just who they were, but how they chose to be. The fundraiser resumed its gentle rhythm, but now there was a quiet certainty beneath it. Donors approached Myra with renewed confidence. Volunteers moved with lighter steps. The room felt anchored. Keanu stayed present but did not explain himself to anyone else. His work was already done in a way words could not improve. As the evening moved closer to closing, Keanu felt the final tension surface. It came not from outside threats, but from within. The choice he had avoided for years was now standing clearly in front of him. To remain entirely unseen, or to allow one truth to be known so others would not suffer confusion again. Near the entrance, a small group gathered for closing remarks. Mr. Dale looked to Myra, waiting for her signal. She took a breath and stepped forward, her voice calm. "Tonight reminded us that kindness is not loud," she said. "It is careful. It is patient. Someone tried to rush a story before it was ready, but we chose to wait, because trust grows when people are allowed dignity." Keanu listened from the side, his heart steady. Myra continued. "Moving forward, the center will share updates openly and clearly, not because we are pressured, but because we believe in accountability with compassion." There was a soft murmur of agreement. Heads nodded. The message landed without spectacle. As the crowd began to disperse, Keanu felt Sandra's presence beside him again. "You crossed the line you were afraid of," she said. Keanu smiled faintly. "I think I honored it instead," he replied. Sandra touched his arm lightly, the smallest gesture. "I am proud of you," she said. The door opened and closed as guests left, each carrying something quieter than excitement. Gratitude, reassurance, inspiration without instruction. Keanu watched them go, feeling something loosen inside him that he had carried for a long time. Just as he turned to leave, Myra approached him one last time. "Thank you," she said, "not for money, for how you showed up." Keanu nodded. "Keep the place human," he said. "That is the only rule." Myra smiled through tears. "We will," she said. As Keanu and Sandra stepped into the night air, the street felt calm, ordinary, untouched by the quiet work done inside. Keanu took a deep breath, feeling lighter. But he also knew something important. The story was not fully complete yet. There was one final moment left, one act of kindness that did not belong to the center, but to someone who had tried to control it. Because true endings were not about winning. They were about what you chose to leave behind, and Keanu was not done choosing yet. The street outside was quiet, almost ordinary, but Keanu felt how different he was walking through it now. The night air was cool and steady, carrying the faint sound of distant traffic and the softer rhythm of his own breath. He and Sandra walked side by side without speaking, their steps unhurried, like they were giving the moment space to finish shaping itself. Some stories ended with applause or explanations. This one asked for something smaller and harder, a final choice made without witnesses. They stopped near the car and Keanu rested his hand on the roof for a moment. Sandra watched him, sensing the weight still sitting behind his calm. "You're thinking about him," she said. Keanu nodded slowly. "If I walk away now," he said, "I protect myself. But if I say one more thing, maybe I protect the next place he tries to break." Sandra met his eyes. "Then do it the way you always do," she said, without anger, without performance. Keanu turned back toward the building, where one light still glowed near the entrance. He walked alone this time, not because Sandra would not follow, but because this was his step to take. The hallway inside was empty now, cleaned and quiet. The scent of coffee had faded, replaced by the simple smell of night air drifting in through an open window. Near the exit, Ethan stood by himself, shoulders slumped slightly, staring at his phone without really seeing it. He looked up when Keanu approached, surprise crossing his face, then something closer to fatigue. "You came back," Ethan said. Keanu nodded. "I did," he replied. They stood there in silence for a few seconds. Keanu did not rush it. Silence was not a weapon here, it was an invitation. Ethan finally spoke. "You could have ruined me tonight," he said. Keanu shook his head. "That was never the point," he said. Ethan laughed softly, bitter but honest. "You always say that, people like you," he said. Keanu looked at him calmly. "People like me are not special," he said. "We just learned what happens when we let anger drive the ending." Ethan rubbed his face with one hand. "I thought exposing things made me useful," he said. Keanu listened without interrupting. "I did not care who got hurt as long as I felt right." Keanu nodded slightly. "Feeling right is not the same as doing right," he said. Ethan swallowed. "I see that now," he said. "Too late." Keanu took a slow breath. "Not too late," he replied. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded paper. It was simple, handwritten, no logo, no name. "This is a contact," Keanu said. "Someone who helps people who chase attention because they feel invisible. If you want to understand why you do this, talk to them. If you do not, walk away. That is your choice." Ethan stared at the paper, his hand trembling slightly as he took it. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Keanu looked at him with quiet honesty. "Because someone once gave me a chair to fix instead of a lecture," he said, "and it kept me from breaking something worse." Ethan nodded slowly, unable to speak. Keanu did not wait for gratitude. He turned and walked away. Outside, Sandra was waiting. She saw Keanu's face and knew the weight had lifted. "Did you say much?" she asked gently. Keanu smiled faintly. "Just enough," he said. She nodded, satisfied. They drove away without hurry, the building shrinking behind them until it blended into the night. Inside the center, Myra finished locking the last door. She stood alone for a moment, listening to the quiet. The fear that had lived in her chest for months was gone. In its place was something steadier. Trust. Not blind, not loud, but earned. Over the following weeks, the center changed in small ways. Donations arrived steadily, transparent and clean. No dramatic announcements. No mystery. The youth program opened on time. Kids filled the rooms with laughter, paint, and questions about the future. Myra led with confidence now, knowing she did not have to carry everything alone. One afternoon, she found a small envelope on her desk. No return address. Inside was a note written in careful letters. It said, "Thank you for keeping the room human, nothing more." Myra smiled and placed it in the old box, the one that once held questions. Now it held answers. Keanu never returned publicly. He did not need to. But sometimes when Myra watched a child fix a loose chair leg or help another kid tie their shoe, she felt that quiet presence again. Not as a person, but as a pattern. Kindness moving forward without asking permission. Far from the center, Ethan sat in a small office across from a counselor, speaking for the first time without trying to prove anything. The paper Keanu had given him sat folded in his pocket, worn from being opened and closed too many times. He was not fixed, but he was beginning. And somewhere between busy streets and quiet mornings, Keanu returned to his life lighter than before. He carried no story to tell, no lesson to share publicly. He did not need to. The story was already moving through other people now. Because the strongest moments were not the ones that demanded attention. They were the ones that changed behavior quietly, the ones that reminded people who they could be when no one was watching. Keanu and Sandra did not say much that night. They did not need to. The room felt it. The people carried it. And the kindness kept moving forward long after the doors had closed.